All right. Here, let me try this. It's even worse. I don't know if I needed to do this before, and because I'm not sure if you can pick this up or not. So I'm really not sure if anybody can hear me or not. I'm really not sure if anybody's out there that cares. I'm not sure about anything on this live. It's my first time actually going live on my phone and not through one of these other uh, broadcast things. So forgive me if it takes me a minute to focus and try to share and project what's been on my mind as of late. Um, so yeah, I really wish that I can figure out if you guys are hearing me or not. Let me see. There we go. Maybe this is better. I know. Okay, here we go. Um, Ramadan Kareem. Uh, for some of you who are following that, uh, belated Passover and Easter for others. And what's up to anyone else out there watching this? I'm not really sure if I'm getting anything because, like I said, this is my first time doing this one on this. And yeah, I think I'm going to go with Noir. Yeah, I'm digging that. All right, so here I am. It's 2012. No, it's 2022. And I've been somewhat reflecting on quite a few things. Most importantly, the mere fact that we've gone through this weekend, Easter weekend and whatnot, and uh, due to our whole transition through this pandemic stuff and everything else, man, the days and whatnot are just every year is different. So different about this one, as a mere fact that I grew up most of my life, the majority of my life, with a certain cultural kind of experience of what the week and weekend and whatnot of Easter, Ramadan, Passover, Emancipation Day, all these other things seem to offer that people would indulge in. And yet, this year, what I found most interesting is that first and foremost, uh, Ramadan, a month long uh, dedication, celebration, whatever experience, happens to be simplest to follow just due to the mere fact that it happened, started on April the 1st and ends on May the 1st. And, every day, the date of that is actually the amount of time and the days. Normally, it kind of straddles, months and whatnot. And so it gets a little awkward. But for some strange reason, this was like Ramadan for dummies, 101, 11. Uh, Also, that it happened to fall uh, in the same realm with Easter and Passover. And as a Washingtonian, also Emancipation Day here in DC. Um, so this WNDC NDC uh, is actually most described by way of the mere fact that Emancipation Day. As a Washingtonian, it's become more evident how unique the emancipation of all Washingtonians whom existed within the District of Columbia prior to 9 months prior to the Emancipation Proclamation even being a thing, and even more farther into almost damn near a year or two until Juneteenth finally became a federal holiday. Now, I want you to follow me here. Uh, Only the emancipation of Washingtonians was there ever a actual legitimate freeing of all indebted and enslaved people by way of paying their masters and uh, debtors cash money for their debt, cleaned it out, and then put money in their pocket, and then gave them the ability to stay and exist as in their craft as they have been within the need for them to be there in the first place. If they were enslaved and working out there, helping master carpenters uh, lay the bricks and whatnot for all these monuments and buildings and whatnot, the emancipation not only freed them from their enslavement, but also gave them the equal upgrade of the people into which they worked around. And so they didn't come back as just laborers, they came back as union craftsmen within their own right. And on so many different levels, what I'm speaking of is the emancipation of Washingtonians created a equal respect for each person that existed within this environment, to such a degree that they just didn't become free. They became respected, no less, no more than everyone else within their surroundings. And that's very rare because once the Emancipation Proclamation, happened, it still took years for the memo to get out and whatnot. And even with all of that, the one thing that did not exist that existed with the Emancipation of Washingtonians was the fact that they were given the support and respect that also came with their freedom papers. And it's been said that one of the most uncomfortable things that's ever occurred in the process of emancipating everyone has been the mere fact that uh, it wasn't enough. You take totally ignorant, enslaved people, and then you wake them up one day and say, "You're free." And they go, "Okay, so what now?" Unlike that, for Washingtonians, their existence in this environment had some form of need, importance, even craft. And so, in doing so, these people became whole people, not just whole people, but whole people with a whole pocket full of money and respect. Uh, I uh, I actually partake in this historic celebration of that event in what we call the drum circle at Malcolm X Park, or Meridian Hill Park, where even prior to the emancipation, Sunday being the one day for them to shine, off day, if you were enslaved, if you did good, your master would allow you to take your drum and go play with the other drummers on their day off out of the park. So when the emancipation happened and everyone was free, not only were they free, but they were so free that they got the drum back. They didn't have to. And so when they came out, they played in unison as totally free, emancipated people first time. And therefore, the energy, the that was created in that moment in time, I truly believe uh, transmitted the essence of what we sometimes desire to be. Uh, um, yeah, this is not 1865, but yeah, and even in that, uh, you're right. And yet, here we are, 2022, and my experience in the emancipation celebration that they had here in DC felt even more different this year because what I realized standing out there in the midst of this crowd of local Washingtonians celebrating their emancipation before everyone else was the mere fact that what was so special about them, and only them, is the mere fact that for the majority of them, I'm sorry, Gloria, I didn't see the question. Um, I'm still working on uh, trying to uh, see them. Okay, I see them now. This isn't 1865. This is 2022. Half of all black pregnancies in a vacuum and this and the other. Okay, you're right. But consider this also. It's 2022, and uh, the population of people of color here in the district, uh, majorly, all have a sense of inclusion to several um, embassies that also exist here that are also investments and whatnot from other countries and whatnot too. Everybody's got an embassy except for black folks. There's no black folk embassy. That's what makes them so rare. The total unidentified existence of people of color that have now become just as valid, although they have no historic legacy to claim by way of any form of pomp and circumstance. Now, to your question, and yet here we are now, and we've getting pregnancies, and so many people are dying of vacuums and whatnot. And I'm gonna be honest, it's not a day that I don't walk through our hood and whatnot, or watch the news or whatnot, and see symbols and instincts and examples of people that make you want to uncomfortably state how invalid many of their existences actually are. I mean, let's be real. Whatever creator that you believe in made humans biodegradable for a reason. And yet, one of the biggest deficits, one of the biggest wastes of human flesh that we have are those with no purpose other than their own self absorption. It's not the way this world works. Um, and therefore, there's a sense of respect in the statement that, while, yes, Many people have, aborted themselves, but there's been a many a day that many of us have found many people that we've seen who've not been that we almost wished had been in some cases, just due to the mere fact that freedom ain't free. And as unfortunate as it may become, sometimes you know, uh, uh, our existence. I'm not silent about the black thing. I'm black. All of this is about blackness, but black is much deeper than just black folks. Black is everything. It's all of us. And yet, the emancipation of people of color faces more than anything else a certain stigma that comes from its own people more than anything else. Because just like everybody else, we all want some kind of special interest. We all want to, oh, don't kill the babies. Don't do this, that, the other. But as black people, what is your responsibility? If they free us all and we're all free to do this, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to be no better, no worse than everyone else we wish to have been equal to. And yet, the purpose of us all is to support the positive growth of humanity as a whole. And that also requires us to also then find ourselves at a point where we have to make a choice between do you be just pro black for just those black folk, but not all the black folks. And Chris Rock even had a joke where he said, white folk hate Negro, the N word. But guess what? Black folks hate them too. I mean, I've seen us as people of color culturally in conflict with each other to degrees that you would have people from certain islands or whatnot that would be like, man, anybody but them. We've got the Divine Nine and the Talented Tens and the Boulets and all this other stuff that all felt their need to be at a certain height and understanding and what an existence that all of us are not allowed to become. Everybody wants to be a lady, but nobody understands the difference between a debutante and a female. We all want to be a gentleman, but nobody wants to tell the difference between an educated person and an ignorant fool. Um, we're in a whole new world now. We're in a whole new perspective, and that requires us to be more mindful of what we got, who we are now, and the whole world perspective. We are now, as American people of color, now in a state of recreating an existence that has never existed before, and that includes all of us. And in order for it to include all of us, that also means that even though some of us are still salty about how we've been treated up until now, we got time for that. That post traumatic slave syndrome is just as damaging as the argument that some from the faith like Judaism utilize as, oh, how bad the Holocaust was. And yet, many of us people of color really, truly, honestly feel we should be getting the same that they got. And yet, I don't see too many of us bitching and moaning about the treatment of the Palestinians, of the African Jews of color, um, or how in our Holy Land, right now, there's so much conflict over supremacy. And yet, regardless of what book, there's Muslims and Jews, and Christians that are right now in a state of conflict over who is more than someone else. There's no coexistence, and yet we allow a lot of those things because, well, we believe certain people deserve to enforce their supremacy over others, and yet we want the same freedom and respect that we allow others to prevent others from having. When we travel as Americans, no matter where we go, no matter how much we feel like we belong to other cultures and existences where we travel, we will all still be known as Americans, and yet we get so caught up in the us in our cultures and race and whatnot that we fall short of the we the people. We uh, fall short due to our non-union mentality. We fall short of our past feelings of how we've been subjugated, and yet all of us sit on this dirt, and none of us are going to be capable of existing without all of us. Oh, I just want to move on off and find a place where we could just do us. That's how our suppressors believed that they needed to do before us. And so, if we don't learn from our history, we um, are forced to consider the options. Um, and yet, this whole emancipation of Washingtonians stands out most importantly because I've got friends that are of these other orders and social classes and whatnot, who at some certain times question why their group of people feel it uncomfortable that they coexist with others that are not made or belong to these certain orders and organizations, fraternities, or whatnot. And so they consider themselves at a certain existence or worth than your common folks. We want the freedom for black folks, but we don't want to give them niggas too much because you know how they act. They ain't gonna do but mess it up. And that's the same thing that we complain others have treated us like. Don't treat us like Africans and have this kind of thing with respectful Africans and bush people, and how we can travel abroad and not be capable of understanding what they mean when they identify, unless those people, that's bush people, those, this, that, and the other. Oh, man, you go to Dominican Republic and they hate Haitians. It's on the same damn island, and yet something about that drum major instinct, that desire to be first, that desire to lead the parade. Yeah, I remember there was a video out of Martin Luther King's first interview where he was up next to or against this governor of North Carolina who also was a Grand Dragon or whatnot, talking about this whole race issue in the 50s. And what surprised him the most is how he stated, look, time is coming. We have to make it right. We have to free everybody and treat everybody on the same level. No more, no less than everybody else. You don't get an extra anything. There ain't no. Every man should stand upon his own too. But also understand that while freedom ain't free, this world revolves with a certain order, with a certain understanding that your existence is built upon more than just yourself. You're not just trying to, all it's all mine. And yet what we suffer from the most at this very moment is the mere fact that it's harder for us to free the mind so that the ass will follow of the very people who have now been freed and unaware. You're free. There's nothing stopping you from getting up and proving how valuable your existence is to not just yourself, but to humanity, not just your hood. And that's what makes us who we are. And instead of this, my folks, your folks, this, that, and the other. Ain't got time for all of that. We used to be lynching this, that, and the other. You know what? We're biodegradable. We got time for all of the you owe or you this, that, and the other. If you want your freedom, you take your freedom. But when you get your freedom, when you conquer an oppressor, you better be ready to handle the responsibilities that that oppressor exists in. You can't take over the banking system and not know how to bank. What do? Go rob a doggone bank and you take all the money, and then what? You know, all of the mortgages and all the other things like that. You got to handle all these things. You got to make this money move. You just can't sit on it because you've been dying to get it. It wasn't made for you to hold. It was made for you to use. It was made for you to do more than just utilize one of the seven deadliest sins. Everybody's got a purpose. Everybody's got an agenda. Everybody wants to, get some get back for something that happened. And yet there are so many other people that they're unaware of. They got issues too, but they just want the same thing that you really honestly want. And that's that fair share, that fair break, that ability for them to be allowed to be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And yet here we are, 2022. And we as Americans are struggling the most with our own personal issues without the understanding that everyone else in the world wishes they were us, wish they had what we have, because what we have surpasses a lot of what is structured for so many things that have been built in what we consider the old world. And yet, every day we get up and we wake up and we go out, we lose the ability to show a better example of how productive this theory of unification actually could be, because we are still subjected to uh this identity of 1%, and this and that. 1% can do whatever they want to, and it still ain't gonna change a million billions of people if they ain't falling for it. You can say it all you want to, but what you gonna do? Oh yeah, they want to get rid of the population. They don't want to get rid of the population. They want to get rid of a lot of insignificant people who think that they deserve to be on the most sacred dirt on this earth, in this most sacred dynamic on this earth, without any instinct of basically being able to create an image and an example of something greater than what exists anywhere else in the world. Everyone else wants to be us. Nobody wants to tell us how lucky we should be, because it don't feel lucky when we're not aware of what it feels like to live in third world country society. They don't want to point out how awkward it is to not wake up, or to wake up with no running water, no food available 24 hours, or no ability to vote, no idea of what fairness is, no structure of whatnot. And it doesn't take overseers, it takes more seers to be beers. And And yet, where we're at right now as humanity is a very uncomfortable state for the masses who feel more subjected and more controlled, more moderated, more suppressed for the ability to be an individual. We have been bludgeoned with this new change in our identifications. Right now, there are congressional people that are literally sitting there contemplating how can they totally alleviate this identity called gender due to the mere fact that there's more than 57 different identifiable genders that have now been registered so far. And yet, we've been conditioned to believe that we're structured in just man and woman. You rather you're straight or you're gay. You rather this or you're that. None of that exists anymore. You can voice your opinion on as to how you feel unholy any other person's choice and how they identify themselves, and end up being charged with a hate crime. And that's no small thing now. You can stand up for your rights and speak on what you believe to be, and not realize that it's set in such a selfish state in comparison to the reality that this planet don't rotate just to allow you to exist in it with absolutely no concern for the existence of each and every other person who finds themselves in close proximity to you. That's a whole new thing. That's something that's never existed for humankind as a whole on this earth, all the way down to when we showed up. This is the same thing that probably in most cases could have been a part of the downfall of lesser beings like dinosaurs. And yet, here we are in a country and a dynamic into which, even as of late, even as of late, there are reports that this concept of black and white is more than slowly growing extinct, and that more and more people are finding a need to identify as less of just them or us and more of, but I am me. Take me for whom I am. And it's not just the audacity of being prevented of being that, but the reality that the next question is, so what else you got? Why are we allowing you to be here? You know, is it benefiting not just yourself, but all of us? If not you, then who? Um, these things are bigger than some of our smaller things. We got wars going on. We're trying to pick sides while we let other wars go by that we don't want to pick the sides. We don't want, oh, we want to, have a say about what's going on in the UK or Russia and the Ukraine, but we don't want to talk about what's going on in Jerusalem. We don't want to talk about what's going on in Africa. We don't want to talk about what's going on in Asia. We don't want to talk about all those other things with those other people, especially the people of color, whom are trying to find the same inevitable rights that many of us abuse on a daily basis in a manner of, I'm better than you. I should deserve more. I should this, that, and the other. That selfish mentality will never benefit each and every person, and yet that freedom that we call so inspiring comes with consequences, comes with responsibilities. It's not that simple. There is no more real estate available for you to just go find yourself your own little private Idaho and take your own potatoes with you and y'all just not have to deal with everyone else. This is all or nothing. And it's not that simple no more. And that's not an easy task for anyone. As I watch this, I sit back and I feel sometimes the instincts of ancestors within my genetics that are sitting back and going, wow, look at us. We've come so far. We can do these things. We can be these things now. And yet, still, there's so many people that are utilizing that same old fashioned kind of structure of morality or whatnot against their own growth. And yet, here we are, and nothing's stopping us. And I want to say so many other things, but right now, even as I'm putting this out, all I can think about is the mere fact that we've come a long way as humans. We have the records of that just by way of the history into which we continue to identify. Oh, yeah, from the Egyptians, oh, from this, oh, from that, this, that, and the other. All those things, we are now on a one-to-one basis as individuals on this planet, and yet it's still not enough to realize how powerful each and every one of us is once we are more capable of believing in us more than just the me. I'm not asking for you to believe or disbelieve or debate or anything else about anything that I'm saying here in these views. If any of this finds you to be entertaining, enlightening, or anything else of that nature, not just thank you like cash. Find my cash app. I'm not begging. But as I sit here, the best thing that I can honestly say is that I would like for each and every person viewing this to trust and believe that I'm sending positive healing light and energy in hopes that whatever you may need, you may find with the ability to pass whatever you may not need to someone else and continue to send positive healing light and energy to everyone in hopes that we can find a way of being more understanding that this planet is bigger than our own personal, and everything that we may desire or want comes with a price. For whatever you wish and want for, understand that there's a border system. Okay, so if we give you this, what do you give us? What is this going to do to benefit us as mankind? We can't even find a way of being kind to our own selves and others due to the audacity that we feel we deserve over the instinct that we believe others are defined by. And yet, here we are. You good?